Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours, where we're just good old Dr. Roy Casagrande and Jeremy hanging out, chatting about things. We have somewhat of a guide to what to talk about, but it never really works. So we'll see what happens. Hey Roy, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jeremy.
Good. So we were just talking before we hit record about kind of the back and forth between Trump. We're on day 32 now of the Iran war, and so we're in month 2 now. And he has said that the war is over 12 times now, while also saying we're about to blow you up and we're about to invade. So
yeah, I mean, he clearly has no grounding in reality, so he can just say whatever he wants to, and that becomes his reality. So 1 minute, the war is over. That's his reality. The next minute, he's going to invade with ground troops. That's his reality. And then the next minute, he's going to blow them up. And that's his reality. He's decoupled from reality. We live in a post-truth, post-fact world anyway. I mean, ever since the internet started spewing all these insane lies. Don't get me wrong. There was conspiracy theories, forever. But just it went into hyperdrive. And so I think he's just a representation of that at some level.
Yeah, I'm actually somewhat impressed and a little distressed that he somehow finds the time to make all of these statements and then jump back, and he's like, you know what, let's get rid of birthright citizenship and attack all these other people. I'm like, dude, how, like, spend some time with your grandkids. You're 79. Like, what are you doing? He's in
his 80s. Isn't he in his 80s already?
He feels like it. I thought he was in his 80s. He will be in his 80s soon. He is on the path to being the oldest president in the United States. Already holds the record for the oldest elected. So
yeah, okay.
Oh, fun times. So going back to,
speaking of aging people, okay. I just want to point out in the book, in the Dune book, Frank Herbert has Harkonnen as a pedophile. So he's an overweight, aging, ill pedophile who starts a war in a desert planet and is destroyed by a theocracy. I just felt like we should throw that out there.
Does he have temper tantrums in the book, like in the movie?
He does. He does, yeah. Oh, for the record, Saeed sent me a meme. So that was that. And so I want to just credit Saeed. Shout out to Saeed. It was a good meme.
Well, I don't know if Trump has read the book.
I have so many Saeed friends right now. There's going to be like 15 guys going, "What, me?"
The real Saeed knows.
The real Saeed.
The real way. You're all the real ones. You know what I mean.
Yeah, it means happiness. It's a good name.
It is good. It is a good name. So should we talk about the potential of or the probability of a U.S. ground invasion? I mean, we've already mobilized thousands of troops and equipment into the Middle East. So usually when that happens, we tend to use them instead of just doing a show of force, especially with this administration. Initial thoughts.
Okay, before we do that, I just thought of something.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Which is what you were talking about. Like he said that we've won 12 times. I don't remember who said it. I don't know if it was Trump or somebody else, but somebody at some point said, we win as soon as we open the Strait of Hormuz. And that's what winning means. And then Trump has recently contradicted that and said, we don't need to open the Strait of Hormuz to win. But before we get to the we win, before we get to the second part that Trump contradicted. Yeah, Jeremy?
Question, Roy. Wasn't it open before we attacked them?
That's my point. If you cause a problem and then fix the problem, that's not a win. That's going back to where you were. It's just baffling. Okay, so I want to give a classic example of this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to hold off on this classic example because it's just not worth it. But if you win a war, if you start a war and that triggers a crisis and then you solve the crisis, you didn't gain anything. You just Yeah. So this is a typical Republican strategy, just for the record, to go political here, where they'll create a problem and then they'll try and come up with a solution for the problem. They don't actually solve it because they love the problem. And then they convince their voters they've solved the problem and they move on. And so
So it's like 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, they're boasting like, we got barrel of oil back down to $60-$70. We did it. It's like,
we did it.
What?
No. He just broke even. And he didn't, because he spent $1 billion a day murdering people, and you didn't achieve the real goal, which was to topple the Islamic Republic.
Including our own service members who have died senselessly in this stupidity.
And for the record, there is a Kuwaiti pilot who's got 3 kills now because he shot down 3 U.S. airplanes. And I believe it's 5, right? It's 5 to be an ace. He just needs to get 2 more U.S. airplanes.
This is a fighter,
an ace.
Or was this the anti-aircraft? I can't remember. I haven't seen the.
I thought it was a Kuwaiti pilot who got those 3 planes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking 2 more, and he's an ace. That's pretty sweet. That was a hat trick.
Man.
That's what you call friendly fire.
Yeah. So including the troop buildup for a potential ground assault.
So we should talk about that.
And then Trump is also, and he's been doing this for a few weeks now, saying that he's going to blow up this desalination plants and energy infrastructure and stuff like that, which is not something that you want to do to civilian population in times of war. I'm not an expert on the Geneva Conventions, but I don't think is that a war crime when you start?
I mean, I think water is the most precious liquid on the planet. It's even more precious than petroleum. It's fresh water. And so I think taking out desalination plants and leaving a population to die of thirst has to be a crime against humanity or a war crime. So I would think that would be a serious escalation on an undeclared war that's in violation of every UN charter and every international treaty.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I kind of feel like to some degree, war crimes there's just like a label. I feel like nothing's ever really been done about war crimes. I mean, goodness, look at Israel. Like, what are we going to do?
No, I mean, seriously. During the Reagan administration, the United States mined the Nicaraguan harbors and got busted. The World Court found the United States guilty, and Ronald Reagan said, I don't care. We're just going to keep doing whatever we do. And basically set the tone for the world that the United States doesn't recognize international law. And then, of course, George Bush Jr. shredded whatever was left of that. And so, by the time we got to Trump, it was just like, this is normal. The United States is a rogue state that goes around smashing places and mining people's harbors and overthrowing their democracies. But Trump has added a layer because he keeps saying, I'm going to get the oil. And that's like 19th century European colonialism. This is language you expected 150 years ago. And I think that's what's shocking, right? Like, I thought the United States had learned that if it pretends to be the good guy and that it pretends to follow international law, that, there was some value in that. There was like some PR value. And Trump doesn't even hide it.
Maybe there is. Maybe it's just pandering to his base, because I think his base really loves when he says stuff like that. The rest of us are like, what are you talking about? But it's basically like, he said he's going to get the oil, and this man blessed by God is going to do what he says, no matter. I don't know. It's like cult mindset. I think he's just making sure he keeps that kind of language going. It's worked for him for a long time.
In 2003, I was on a debate about whether or not we should do the Iraq War. This is right before the war broke out, and the second genocide against the Iraqi people. And when we were, there was a group of conservatives who were just like, war. They couldn't wait to do it. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. And one of the students got up and he said, you know, if we do this war and we conquer Iraq, it's ours now. The Bible says so. The Bible says we get all of it. And they were like, well, what do you mean? He goes, like, we get the oil, all of that belongs to us now. And they're like, no, there's international law. We're just there to get rid of Saddam Hussein and weapons of mass destruction. You know, and I'm sitting there going, all the evidence says there's no weapons of mass destruction. Anyway, and so they were trying to back away, but in reality, that was his base. That was their base, right? This far right wing fundamentalist Christian, you know, like, we just want to steal resources from the rest of the world so that we can live our privileged white middle class lives. We don't understand why the U.S. economy is shrinking. And the crazy thing is, again, Republicans solving a problem they created. The Republicans have been cutting taxes for the rich, allowing the rich to hoard that money and taking it effectively out of the economy. And in the process, crippling the middle class with high taxes and a shrinking economy. It's shrinking because the rich are hoarding the money. Like, if they would just simply tax the hell out of the rich and get some of that money back into circulation, the economy would start to expand and people would have money to grow the economy. It's like a squirrel who's packed a hollow tree with 1,000 acorns. You know, like, at best, those 1,000 acorns might turn into one tree, but odds are all of them will just rot in the stupid tree, and the squirrel will die before they eat any of the acorns. And it's just a giant waste. And that's what the U.S. economy is like to a large degree. The other part of the U.S. economy, of course, is this catastrophic thing where it hangs on the edge because it has a $39 trillion debt that's based on the petrodollar and the fact that the GCC states keep putting their oil revenue into U.S. banks. And so in a really strange way, the United States has made itself completely dependent on this world order that Trump is tearing to shreds. And, like, I don't understand why the oligarchs are going along with it. Like, I know they're all into crypto and they're libertarians and, you know, they have a 6-digit IQ and they plan to put their brains on in computers and put them on Mars. But the reality is that they're probably just doing too much ketamine and need to actually back off and do, I don't know, caffeine or something, you know, a healthier drug.
It's a different world. It's a different world altogether.
They live in a different world. They go to different hospitals than we do. They don't, when they land in the airport, they land in a different section. They don't go through passport control. Like, they have security. They live in a different world. That sci-fi movie Elysium is about now. It's not about the future.
Right.
Yeah.
If we were all aristocrats, then there would be no class warfare.
You've solved it.
We could all be aristocratic communists and get along. Yeah. Only if there was like a few hundred of us.
But once you're that powerful, the only thing you can think of is how you can hurt the other person.
Oh, I hope not. I hope that's not the truth.
Yeah, I think so. It becomes like a disease. Like, your brain gets obsessed with, I need to make more money. I'm not making enough money. I need to, and it becomes like this addictive game. And you just want to hoard and keep packing those acorns into this stupid hollow tree.
I think that's definitely kind of the curse that comes with it if you don't have some sort of other values or you know, ethics guarding you from that, because certainly we've seen that countless times, right? But I think those are the more noticeable examples and cases, because I'm sure there are people out there that have gotten a huge amount of wealth and they realize that, hey, this isn't, I think part of it is like, you have to realize that it's not because of your own merits that you are that you have so much money. There's so many other things that play into the success of a person. A lot of it is just sheer luck. You do have to have some merits. You have to have the merits in place. You have to have the connections in place. You have to have the right timing. There's a lot of luck involved here. And so people do think that they are either merit alone or divinely blessed or what have you. They tend to be the ones who, you know, fall in love with money, and that is a bad direction to go.
Also, in our hyper-capitalist, hyper-transactionalist world, because the whole planet is there now, right? I mean, I guess except for Cuba and North Korea. Although North Korea is now opening up resorts. So I guess North Korea decided to try to imitate Dubai and have a bunch of tourism. I'm having a hard time imagining wanting to do tourism in North Korea. But anyway,
Hey, you've never tried until you try, Roy.
that's true. That's true. I derailed my brain when I started talking about the hyper-capitalist transactional world. What ends up happening, I think, is people lose sight of what money is to begin with, and then what it's for. So money should not be the ends; it should be a means. So you're trying to achieve something, so you need the money to achieve that thing. So what's happened is I think people have become addicted to accumulating money because they now see it as the ends. They no longer see it as a means to an ends. And that's problematic. Actually, Hannah Arendt and Herbert Marcuse both talk about this. Herbert Marcuse in his book One Dimensional Man, and Hannah Arendt in The Human Condition. And that what happens, and Hannah Arendt says it maybe a little bit better in a way. The people who are the producers think they're in charge, but what they don't realize is they've become addicted to the system and they've lost control. And it's actually just become a society that's driven by appetites. And so that there really aren't architects for the society anymore. There are architects who are building buildings, and there are entrepreneurs who are making businesses, but they're not operating on their own anymore. They've become part of the system, and they've lost their autonomy. And they feel addiction when they act the same way that a heroin addict does when they accumulate the wealth, and they don't recognize anymore that they're accumulating for the sake of accumulation. And then, Hannah Arendt's solution is not really doable, which is too bad because it was cool. She said what we have to do is we have to stop having a contemplative life and have an active life, and that we need to become actively engaged with the world. And it's like, well, okay, how? Sitting in your loft apartment in New York City, typing out a book on a typewriter? Like, I'm not sure where this, does she mean protest? Does she mean we should all run for political office? Does she mean we should all become entrepreneurs? I don't understand.
Farming.
I kind of
just
what farming would be great. I think
I
a
don't
great
know.
place would be reading books. That would be my suggestion to start. But obviously that can't be the end because that's still contemplation. That's still not action. But there's no point in acting if you don't know anything. I mean, we already have that. He's the White House.
I guess the worst kind of decision is indecision. Is that the saying, or did I just make that up?
I don't know, but what sounds like that, that was a philosophy of Prussian military tactics, was it's better to make a decision and it be wrong than to make no decision.
Which I disagree with. It's better to think with discernment about a a I mean, it depends. If you're looking at military tactics, it's different, right? Like, do we just stand here and get annihilated? Because that is a decision. So
right.
Indecision.
Yeah, if you're a lieutenant and you've got like a platoon of soldiers and you're under a hail of fire, hesitating is probably not always the right answer. But I can think of there was a account I was reading of this British soldier in Burma. And they were completely surrounded by the Japanese. Like they were hosed. They were in such big trouble. And, his subordinates came to him and they were like, I think we're finished. Let's do one last attack and try and bust our way out through the Japanese. And, they're talking it through. And he's like, look, we're going to end up taking like 90% casualties if we succeed, if we're lucky, and we'll make a hole and 10% will get through. And they're like, that's better than all of us being captured or killed. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to take a different approach. I think we should make a cup of tea, right? Because he's English. And so they make tea and they end up cooking some food and they just end up spending the next few days doing a bunch of nothing. And eventually the Japanese were attacked somewhere else, I think by a Chinese unit. And so they broke the circle around those British soldiers and the British soldiers just walked out. So sometimes doing nothing is, even in combat, exactly the right thing to do. And I think that's where, the difference between being an amazing leader and a mediocre leader or a bad leader is that either it's intuition or experience or reading lots of books. I don't know. But there's some combination of things that a person would do to make it so that they made the right decision at the right moment, whether it was, to attack or not to attack. And by the way, you can always split the difference, which is what I think a lot of us, that's our intuition, is split the difference. But think about splitting the difference in that moment. Have half of the guys sit around and have half of the guys attack. That's the worst possible outcome in that moment. Right? Like the half, if all of them attacking, 90% of them are going to get wiped out. Then when half of them attack, it'll be 100% that are wiped out. And then, at that point, you're drawing the attention of the Japanese, who might go finish the remaining 50% that stayed behind. And so one of the things that I think people need to remember is those kind of decisions in combat or in politics, or whether to attack a country, need to be made, if you have the time, with a little bit of thought and a little bit of strategy, a little bit of tactics. If you don't have the time, then you're stuck. You make the snap decision and hope it's right. I would want, before I had somebody in that position, I would want to know that they had some experience. So, like they had been in politics for 40 years, or they had been in combat. They had served in the military in Vietnam or something instead of having bone spurs, whatever. I would want to know that person had, at some point in their life, had more responsibility than just trying to hit a ball off of a tee. I think that at the end of the day, one of the problems with the United States is that the average American is an idiot and doesn't know the difference between good leadership and garbage leadership. And because they can't differentiate that, it means that they are shit leaders. And if you're in a republic or a democracy, you don't want your public to be making those kinds of decisions if they're idiots. And that's where we are. We're from a country where people can't differentiate between good leaders and bad leaders, but they're the leaders because they're the ones voting and making the choice for which leader is going to be the next leader. So it's like having a person who doesn't know how to play a musical instrument for you. It's not great. You just don't want to see that.
There is an extreme lack of good leadership. There is an abundance of poor leadership. I've always been pretty surprised because, like, when I was in the Air Force, I had several awful commanders, but you don't think about that quality of a commander as being awful until you have a good commander, and you're like, whoa, those other guys are trash. Like,
yeah, this is what it looks like.
Morale is so high under the sky. Like, we feel like a cohesive unit. We want to work together. We want to exceed and excel at our mission here. And then, so when I meet other leaders or people in leadership positions, I immediately can see the difference. But I don't think people have that kind of experience where they have seen good leadership. And not like, I'm not talking presidential or politics or anything, because that's to a certain extent not real leadership. I mean, it is, because they set the tone for things, which is not great. So even if Trump were to make a lot of really good administrative decisions, which he has not, this tone in which he addresses people in the nation and other countries and other leaders sets the tone of how we should behave as a society, which we've seen how that has gone for the past, 12 years. So this is a plea for people who have good leadership skills to continue to do so and teach the younger generation on what it means to be a leader through like an emotionally intelligent leader, compassionate, vulnerable, and just listen to your people and take care of them. That's kind of
that is
all it means.
that is actually one of the reasons why we're in this situation. Is the baby boomers thought they were immortal, and they felt like they could take over political power, and they would just never turn it over to anybody. So they didn't train the next generation. They didn't put the time, the effort to work on the next generation. My generation, Generation X, we're tiny because the baby boomers only decided to have one child each. So they made this bottleneck generation. And then they refused to give up power to us. They decided that they were going to be 80 and still be in charge of everything. So we got skipped. And now what's going to happen is the boomers are finally dying. So, and the millennials are just hosed economically. But they're the ones who are going to be stuck trying to figure out how to do these new leadership positions. And they don't have X generation to teach them how to do it because X generation was cut out by the boomers. So in Germany, the Supreme Court, you have to retire. I think it's it's either your 68th birthday or 67th birthday. I don't remember. And I'm beginning to now think that's not the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. It doesn't have to be 68. It could be 70 or whatever. But there needs to be a point where it's like, here's your hat. Here's your cane. Now, I need you to try to walk home on your own. And it's time for you to go. And it doesn't have to be true retirement. It could be, and now you get to teach in a university or a high school or something. Or now you get to apprentice this guy that's going to replace you. There could be some kind of process where we made use of those people because they have all this wisdom and knowledge and all this experience. And they're still, valuable in society. The problem is in the United States, we're like, no, nursing home. And then we marvel because we're like, the Inuit used to put people on icebergs and watch them go out to sea. And like, dude, what do you think a nursing home is? It's a freaking iceberg. You're just waiting for them to die instead of making use out of them. But anyway,
I feel like we have two categories here, right? We have the nursing home, and then we have political office. It's like,
perfect.
This is not. We should have.
But it's not the political.
We should have the mentorship program.
It's also like when I think of like universities, the administration are all geriatrics. Like, I mean, it's just become
that's true.
Everything is like that. Anyway, you were going to say something. I cut you off. I feel so.
Oh no, yeah. You're very kind, Roy. I feel like I cut you off entirely too much as well.
Well, so what I have to tell my students when we do online classes is when you're doing this type of thing, we don't get the right cues.
There's like a half-second delay. And so it's just, yeah.
Yeah, the online, we have to give each other grace. But if it was face-to-face, I would have punched you by now.
Because you love to punch people in the face. That's it.
I haven't punched anybody in at least 20 years.
Yeah, so good cycle.
I feel good about that. No, I feel bad about that. I miss it.
I'm sure your hands are happy about it.
One of my favorite punching places is the nose, both receiving and giving, because that feeling you get, your eyes water up. It's so weird. It's almost like wasabi.
Yeah, the body does not like. We do not like getting hit in the nose with anything.
Oh, it's
like
amazing.
Playing sports or anything, it's just like,
it's
you get hit anywhere else except for like.
No, I can think of worse places.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah.
At least like 3, 4. At least 4 worse places.
Oh boy.
So you wanted to also talk about a ground invasion.
Yes,
which I derailed us from.
We're 30 minutes in, and we're gonna get to our first topic here, which I did warn everyone that this is probably gonna happen.
Yeah.
So initial thoughts on we've sent we sent Marines there a couple weeks ago now.
Yeah, I think there's 2,000 or something like that.
So and then now we have the army has been deployed. We have paratroopers ready for action. Even the Pentagon has said that they're ready for weeks of ground invasion. So,
82nd Airborne.
Yeah. Do you think this is going to happen? I guess we'll start with that.
So it's impossible to know because, we don't know what Trump's going to do. And, he thinks it's genius, but making random decisions with no thought put into it is not genius. There's nothing brilliant about that. So it could. My hope is he does what he usually does, which is taco, right? Trump always chickens out. I hope kicks in because this would be a catastrophe that I don't know how the United States could extract itself from. This would make things go from bad to so much worse. Right now, having troops in the region is good because it's like a fleet in waiting. Iran doesn't know what's going to happen next, and you leave them hanging and keep them guessing. As soon as you start to land the troops, now Iran knows what's going to happen next, and that's taken off the table. So my hope is that he keeps the fleet in waiting approach and doesn't actually land. I've heard, three possible scenarios. One is from Trump and the administration. One is that they invade Khark Island, and then another one is that they invade Tunb and is Abu Musa, and that I forget. Is it Big Tumb and Little Tumb? I don't remember. There's three islands that the UAE owned at the moment of independence in 1971, and Iran just went, these are ours, and took them. They made a deal for Abu Musa where it's split, so it's technically in both Iran and the UAE, and then UAE citizens get treated one way and Iranians get treated the other way. But then I think in the last few years, Iran basically said, no, it's really ours. We don't care about the previous deal. So the third option, or the third thing that's been floated around, is an actual invasion, including trying to grab, actually there's a fourth one now I think about it, including trying to grab the nuclear sites. The fourth one is raids. He would just use special forces like SEALs, and you just go in and do a raid and then get the hell out. So there's no like long-term occupation force. So the first three would require, occupation with supply lines, and it would be a more traditional invasion. The fourth one would be, like the Dieppe raid in World War II. You just go in, shoot the place up, and hope you can get your guys out before the enemy responds. Let's deal with each of them separately, I guess. So let's do the last one first. If you did the raids and you did get your men out and you kept doing that, that would be devastating, just for the record. I think you could do a lot of really serious damage. The problem is with something like that, something is going to go wrong. It's guaranteed. Whether you're using submarines to do a coastal raid or you're using helicopters to go inland. Coastal raids with submarines doesn't really work because the Persian Gulf is so shallow, the Iranians will know where your subs are. There's no way to hide, really. The Iranians themselves have submarines, but they're really small. They're like these tiny submarines, and they function really well in the Persian Gulf because they have small profile. They go to the bottom and hide, but you're not going to be able to do much with them, and Iran isn't going to be able to do much with them. So like one of the things that's come out, Israel and Iranian International is reporting that Iran has threatened to invade 2 GCC states. I don't believe it's true. I think this is Zionist propaganda. Iranian International is clearly a pro-Israel organization. And I think they're just, stirring the pot and trying to make hay out of nothing. But how would they do it? Like if you put your soldiers on a transport and you try to cross the Persian Gulf, it's not a quick trip. So every Air Force in the region will see it and I don't know if y'all know this, but airplanes are better than ships when it comes to combat. So there'd be a bunch of sunk Iranian ships at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. And then the other option would be you load your soldiers into those midget submarines and, like, what are you, 10, I think they have 30 submarines, so 10 soldiers each, that's 300 guys. Like, what's that going to do? So that's stupid. That's not on the table. That's not an option. But in the case of the United States, then it means that SEALs would have very limited options because of the difficulty of bringing submarines into the Persian Gulf. So then at that point, you're probably looking at Rangers and doing aerial attacks, going in and then trying to get out. Helicopters are fragile. Helicopters crash on a regular basis. The UAE has already lost a helicopter in its military operations. Helicopters go down without there being warfare. The United States tried to do a rescue of the Iran hostages during the Iran hostage crisis, and during a refueling, a U.S. helicopter crashed in Iran, and they had to abort the mission because they didn't have enough capacity to bring the guys out. So even if they had done it, they were going to still have to leave people behind. They realized that was just that was a no-go. So if the United States has the will to accept losses and that there's going to be some measure of accident, helicopters going down, for example, then that could be an interesting tactic. I don't know if you can bring down a regime doing it, but you could definitely, hurt Iranian infrastructure. But then that makes me ask the question, why not just do it with a missile or a drone? At that point, it just feels like you're doing it just because you want the heroics of having guys parachute in and then get lifted out by helicopter. Like, I'm not sure why you can't just do a kamikaze drone or fire a missile into the same exact location. If you were trying to kidnap somebody, then it would make sense. Like, that's basically what we did with Maduro. We took out all the anti-aircraft sites in Venezuela and a path leading to where Maduro was, and then sent in a raid force to go nab him. But if you were not trying to do something like that, then I don't get why you would do it. So anyway, there's that. If you did the Tunb, let's do Tunb and Abu Musa next, the 3 islands, they have no value. Like, who cares? It amounts to, I think, 0.01% of Iran's total GDP. They won't notice. This isn't even a mosquito sting, right? This is less than a mosquito sting to them. I don't know what the point of doing it would be. And I'm going to mix this with Harg Island. If you did Harg Island, that would be devastating to Iran. There's no two ways about it, because that's where Iran is all, like 90% of its energy that it sells comes out of Harg Island, something like that. And Harg Island is the perfect location for this. It's deep enough off the coast that they can run piers out and they can bring the big super tankers up. It allows them to have their facilities in a relatively safe location. If you invaded Tunb, Abu Musa, or Harg Island, or all of them, what you would end up with is a situation where they're sitting ducks. If I were Iran, I would let the troop transports, whether they're planes or ships, come in and drop them off. I do a little harassing fire just to get a little attrition on them, but I wouldn't do anything meaningful. I would let them land, and then I would just sit there and lob drones and missiles at them. I would just hammer them day after day after day after day, relentlessly. They're just sitting ducks. Because even if you create air superiority over the space, who cares? I would just send missiles and drones. Why put airplanes into it if you're on Iran's side? I think one of the things that we're missing here is warfare has changed. We still have tanks, and by the end of World War II, airplanes were taking tanks out like there was no tomorrow. Like, the fact that we're still holding on to tank warfare, I think, shows that a lot of military strategists have missed this. Right now, the Israelis are getting their Merkavas torn to shreds by Hezbollah. Hezbollah is obliterating like this whole thing of Hezbollah is dead. We don't have any problems with them anymore. We'll just invade Lebanon and conquer the southern half and annex it to Israel is turning into a grind already because Hezbollah is fighting really hard and they're taking out Israeli tanks left and right. I think we were sort of stuck in the romance of World War II and, you know, the kind of tactics that you could use back then. And I don't think they apply anymore. Don't get me wrong. I do see a use for tanks. Mobile long-range artillery. You park them in the backfield and you just lob area fire at the enemy and hope something hits something. And I guess tank, if there was another tank, you could shoot at it with a tank. That's pretty useful. Otherwise, you end up with that street in Ukraine when the Russians first invaded in 2022, where there was just burnt out vehicle after burnt out vehicle. And you're like, oops, how did you, do you guys not know? It's the 21st century. Did you miss this? And I think that's one of the problems that Trump is. He's in the 19th century. He isn't even in the 20th century. And I think he doesn't get the foolishness of this. Like, it's just so obviously wrong. I was talking to a group of friends on Pacifica. Was it last week? The week before? I can't keep it straight. And they brought up Quezon, right? That was that forward post really close to the North Vietnamese border. That during the Vietnam War, the United States Marine Corps was pushed into that position because we were basically trying to show we control all of South Vietnam. And the North Vietnamese were like, cool, and just started hammering them over and over and over again. This is like shooting fish in a barrel. The North Vietnamese were thrilled, and that's what this would be. So that's the 3 of the 4. The 4th one is a full-scale invasion. And I just don't even know why we're having this conversation. We did a full-scale invasion of South Vietnam, and we lost. We did a full-scale invasion of Afghanistan, and we lost. We did a full-scale invasion of Iraq, and we lost. Like, those things, that type of warfare, it's foolish. It doesn't work anymore. You know, like in the case of Vietnam, depending on whether you talk to the military or civilian leaders, right? According to the official government number, the Vietnam War went 65 to 73, but according to the United States Army, it went 61 to 75. So it's either 8 years long or 14 years long, depending on who you talk to. In that 14 years, we murdered 3 million Vietnamese and lost 58,000 U.S. military personnel and wrecked the U.S. economy. We train wrecked it. The reason we didn't wreck the U.S. economy in the Iraq War and the Afghan War is because we ran up a massive debt borrowing on GCC petrodollars. If it wasn't for those petrodollars, we would have been in the same kind of 1970s train-wrecked economy because of those wars, because they were very expensive. So even then, even without the damage done to the economy, we still were humiliated and defeated in Afghanistan and Iraq. But we were in Afghanistan for 20 years. It wasn't like we went in and we're like, we lost our we had an ADHD moment. We were distracted by a butterfly and we forgot about the war. We were there 20 years, grinding away. I mean, that war ended up longer than our occupation, our military operations in the Philippines to conquer the Philippines. That took us 15 years. So, you know, like Afghanistan, the Philippines war, and then Vietnam, those are our 3 longest wars. The Philippines war, we did win, but that was also 113 years ago. And the Filipinos ultimately quit fighting us. And then when Japan invaded, we told the Filipinos, we need you to help us defeat Japan. And the Filipinos went, okay, on condition that you let us have a referendum to vote on independence after the war. And that's why the Philippines isn't part of the United States anymore, because we honored our agreement. my my point is that, like, yeah, if you're looking for the one time we did win, it was against the Philippines, but the technology was different, and the Filipino people, my life experience has taught me, are like the loveliest, kindest, most generous people I've ever met in my life. It's first of all, it's hard for me to understand how anybody would go, I think we should genocide them and conquer them and take over their country and plunder it and loot it. But then second of all, when you think about the fact that they fought us for 15 years and only reluctantly surrendered just because we were literally massacring their villages. Like, we were going village to village slaughtering people. The low number is we killed 800,000 Filipinos. The higher number is 2 million Filipinos. That war and that brutality did succeed. It worked. A war against Iran will not work. It will end in freaking disaster. It will end as worse than Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq, in part because Iran is 3 times bigger than Iraq. Iran is a mountainous country, and Iran has been preparing for this for years. Iran makes its own cars, its own missiles, its own drones. It has the second best drone industry on the planet. It sells to the Russians because it has a better drone industry than the Russians have. It sells to the Chinese. And, like, I keep seeing these reports where Trump says, we've destroyed 2/3 of their missile launch capability. And then you see the military report and it says, maybe if we're lucky, we've destroyed 1/3. But then think about it. We launched how many hundreds of millions of dollars of missiles into this facility that cost like $30,000. They'll just build another one. Like, the math is stupid.
I think speaking of math, because it felt in the end of week 1, like this was a war of attrition in terms of who can produce and pay for more missiles. So
Yeah.
my next question about the ground invasion was, well, let's just skip past the part where we don't know why we attacked in the first place. I don't think the administration knows. So my next question made why the ground invasion, but this unfortunately just popped in my head is our service members are cheaper than our Tomahawk missiles.
Oh, wow.
I hope that is not, but it sounds like a very oligarchical solution to this problem.
Yeah, so our military service personnel are cheaper than our missiles, but also we're running out of missiles.
And we have plenty of service members right now.
Right. And they're
and the Army just updated its recruitment regs so that it bumped the age up to 42. So
oh, wow. I'm almost eligible.
So, and people have been saying the D word, the draft.
I'm in favor of the draft. I have a sneaky suspicion the United States would go to war a lot less if we had the draft.
And people would vote more, I think.
Oh, I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, you can't hear me.
And you're frozen.
Yay. Okay. All right. So we had a little technical issue. We're all sorted out now, hopefully. So we were talking about why the ground invasion, and we mentioned that U.S. service members are cheaper than Tomahawk missiles and more readily available probably at this point. So what are your thoughts on why we're even considering a ground invasion? Like, hopefully it's just posturing, but if it's not, what's even the point here?
So the United States has really screwed the pooch. And the reason is by attacking Iran and not successfully taking out the regime, right? I know I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. If I were in charge, I would have figured out a way to bring in drones to shoot the IRGC leadership, like 100,000, 200,000 drones, and I would have killed the top 200,000 guys in their beds while they were sleeping. I would have kamikaze drones with machine guns, I don't care. That's what I would have done. And instead, what the United States did was they killed, they went after the top echelon, including the supreme leader himself. And I'm baffled by that because where in human history has there ever been a situation where a leader died, was assassinated, and the government collapsed? Actually, I just thought of one. The Battle of Hastings, 1066, when King Harold, the English king, died when an arrow hit him in the eye and killed him. The English army basically just surrendered to the Normans. So there's one case from almost from 960 years ago that I could think of. Okay, so cool. And then you've got thousands of cases. Lincoln died, the United States didn't collapse. Kennedy died, the United States didn't collapse. McKinley was assassinated, the United States didn't collapse. Garfield was assassinated. Taylor was assassinated. Like, you can go on and on and on, and the United States doesn't collapse because a state is more than just the top leader. In any case, because they failed to do this, to take out the regime, and it's now intact, they've allowed the momentum to swing in the regime's favor. And the reason is that the Islamic Republic shut down the Strait of Hormuz and began hammering the GCC states with missiles and drone attacks. What that did, of course, is it meant that the 30% of the world's chemicals, 30% of the world's fertilizer, and at least 20%, I think it's higher, of the world's petroleum, and then something in that range of the world's natural gas can't go to Europe and India and Africa. And as a result, it's put the entire world's economy in peril. The reality is, right now, nobody's feeling it. I mean, you might be feeling it at the pump because you're seeing the gas prices go up, but it's going to take a while for the real damage to kick in. And, it'll be multi-phased. So, for example, when farmers are trying to get fertilizer and they're seeing the price of fertilizer double or triple, because if you take 30% of a commodity out of a marketplace, it's not going to increase the price by 30%. It's going to double, triple, maybe quadruple, because at that point, each farmer is now competing with the other farmer for that fertilizer because they need that fertilizer to grow their crop. And you don't want to be the farmer that doesn't have it. So you're going to be willing to pay more. And of course, in capitalism, it's screw or be screwed. So, at the end of the day, the fertilizer industry is going to gouge. Of course they're going to gouge. Like, you'd be silly to think otherwise. And the same for fuel prices, whether it's natural gas or petroleum or aviation fuel, like whatever is coming from the GCC, those prices are going to go up. And everything requires energy to be made. Food requires energy to be made. Plastics that come from petroleum require energy to be shaped into the things that we like to have and throw away, because we mostly make garbage out of those plastics, and then it goes into the natural world, including our bodies. It's a genius thing to do. So at some point, we're going to start to feel the pain of this, and I think Great Depression style global depression is on the table. This is possibly going to make the Bush Depression, the 2008 depression, that everybody like an idiot calls the Great Recession. It's not a recession. It was a depression. It could possibly make that look relatively mild. Because having a real estate bubble and having a bunch of investors having bought into real estate Ponzi schemes, that was devastating to the banks, because the banks got so caught up in their own greed, they ended up taking themselves out. It feels to me like those bankers should have gone to prison and we should have let them collapse. And then the banks that didn't misbehave should have then been able to go in there and buy up a bunch of cheap banking assets. But that's not what the United States did. The United States bailed them out for trillions of dollars and let them continue, because the United States is a plutocracy. It's a government by the rich for the rich. So if we don't get the Strait of Hormuz open, we have created a nightmare scenario for the entire planet, including the United States. The United States will be a little bit less affected because the United States produces so much of its own energy anyway. It's less reliant on imports, especially compared to where it was, say, 40 years ago. And then the United States will be a little bit less affected because it can produce a lot of its own fertilizer and chemicals. Houston, Texas, and the surrounding area, Texas City and Pasadena, the nickname for Pasadena is Stinkadena because you can smell the chemicals in the air. That'll go on, and the United States will be fine to a degree, right? The problem is all of these commodities are fungible. So if I have a ship that was going to sell oil to North Korea or South Korea or Japan, and now it's not going to go there because India bought it. Well, now the Japanese are going to try and buy a ship that was on its way to Houston. And so you will see a definite increase in price for the United States. The United States will be affected. Same with China. China has been at the forefront of switching over to green energy. So in a really weird way, they have insulated themselves against this crisis. The problem is they still need plastic and they still need chemicals and they still need fertilizer. So even if they aren't as badly injured by the loss of petroleum and natural gas, they're still going to get hurt. And having the two world's major economies hurt and then the rest of the world crippled and destroyed will make for a nasty depression. So Trump has said he doesn't have to open the Strait of Hormuz to win. But the crazy thing is if he doesn't open the Strait of Hormuz, I don't know how we carry on. Like, I don't see how anywhere is okay. And so I think that's one reason to do a ground invasion. I think the other one is there's no way to bomb a country into submission. I mean, don't get me wrong, we bombed Yugoslavia into submission in 2000, right? We just pummeled it. What I mean by into submission in this particular instance is to topple the regime. There's no way that through bombing alone will the Islamic Republic go away. So if we don't take it out right now in this war, we're not going to do another one. And the reason I'm saying that is because the lesson has been learned. The Iranians have made it clear that they will take out the global economy if they get attacked again. And so, I don't know if Trump is capable of learning. I have a sneaky suspicion he was that child who put his finger in the fire and went, and started crying. And then they, beat his nanny. And then 5 minutes later, put his hand in the fire again and burnt himself again and then beat his nanny. And then, right, like every time he just beat his nanny and never figured out that you can't put your hand in the fire. I suspect he's that guy based on his behavior. The boy cried wolf. The guy's a pathological liar. He lies 20 times a day. It's well documented. And he contradicts himself in those lies. So he can't even keep straight what lie he told. 30 seconds later, he's saying another lie. You said there was a Fox journalist who tried to pin him down because he said excursion and war. And he said, Mr. President, you said excursion and you said war. Which is it? And he said, well, it's a excursion and a war. Then he said, well, it's not a war. It's an excursion to end a war. Wait, what? It's an excursion to prevent a war. You're like, oh my God. Like, I feel like somebody scrambled his brain at some point.
He's trying to understand what the words mean in real time is what's going on.
Yeah. Right. It's like, I thought an excursion was a trip. I've never heard it used in combat for warfare before. Does he mean operation? I feel like he meant operation and it came out excursion because he didn't know.
Someone said incursion and he had never heard the word before. He just knew
excursion.
Oh my God. This is my guess. So he's just...
Oh yeah, that makes sense too. That makes way better sense actually than what I came up with. Incursion. And then he's like, this is an incursion. Oh my God. This is so painful.
We're having a military excursion. And like, does he? Is this from MWR, the Morale, Welfare, and Recreation Department of the? Nope, I don't think so. I think he means incursion. He's in command.
Yeah. And then as if incursion was somehow better.
It just sounds. I guess it sounds smarter, even though, but not anymore. Not anymore.
No, the way I've always heard it used is terrorists did an incursion into, and you know what I mean? Like it's always like this sneaky guerrilla warfare thing. And of course, we haven't done an incursion into Iran, but we're talking about the possibility of doing one. You know, no matter what you did, it would be the wrong answer if you tried to topple the regime. Like, let's say you invaded just Tehran, bring in the 82nd Airborne, drop them straight onto the capital of Iran, and capture the city. Well, one of the things that I think we can all probably guess is that's not where any of the leadership is right now. They're in a bunker somewhere. So then I guess you'd have to go try to get them in that bunker. And so, you know, that I guess you could do a military operation on that bunker. The problem is, I bet you they're smart enough to not put all of the leadership in the same bunker. So as soon as you zapped one of those leaders, you just gave another leader a promotion. And I don't know how you would be able to destroy the state without trying to come in with a full occupation. And again, that kind of warfare just doesn't seem to work. So I think those are the two reasons to do it. One is to get the Strait of Hormuz opened, Hormuz opened, and then the other one is to topple the regime once and for all. But I don't see how you could. I'm dubious as to whether or not we can topple the regime.
Yeah, I'm curious because with any kind of incursion, or even airstrikes and bombing campaigns, what the quality of intelligence is like in this operation. Because so I'm sure we're picking up on signals communications and communications intelligence from things that we can receive through radio signals and whatnot. I don't know how efficiently communication systems are infiltrated or tapped or whatever. But it seems like they probably have a pretty good internal communication system there, and maybe not a lot of spycraft, because I feel like anyone who might be an asset there has either been imprisoned or killed, or because the suspicion is incredibly high. Right? Like the guard is not gonna, anyone that even seems like a spy is gonna be taken out. So the reliability of where leadership might be or what targets might be, because we've bombed the heck out of. There are even reports of things that we could have through like imaging intelligence of like airfields and stuff might not seem that reliable, because I think we had bombed paintings of aircraft on runways instead of actually hitting aircraft. So
oh my God,
which is it's a pretty common tactic, but usually we don't do that. Usually we know our intelligence is high enough to notice that, changes in shadows and whatnot. So I'm not really entirely sure what information may have come out to say, we need to do a ground assault. So just curious on that front. I haven't really looked into it, but I haven't also seen anything about, Iranian intelligence. So our intelligence about Iran, because that was usually the big indicator. Like, U.S. intelligence has stated to some public extent like that this is going on. I don't think we've seen any of that, right? It's just been the administration saying like, we're doing this thing. So
yeah.
And I know we have intelligence collecting stuff on Iran as a target. So anyway,
yeah,
we'll
the New Yorker just put out an article about one of the ways in which the United States was actually interfering with the Iran nuclear program. There was apparently a U.S. agent who would make contact with Iranian scientists, and he would just tell them point blank, "You can work with me, or I'll have the Israelis assassinate you." And he apparently flipped a bunch of Iranian scientists, and they would actually sabotage their own work, slow down Iran's ability to nuke. And I'm assuming that New Yorker did all the footwork required to affect everything that this guy said. That kind of work is obviously, I mean, that requires a lot of intelligence to do and to pull off. So we know that the United States has been working on this stuff for a long time. But I think once you start bombing, you probably lose a lot of assets right off the bat, because there are assets who are going to, like anybody who's suspicious. The other day, Ahmed said something to me I'm not sure about. Let's just kill him to be clear, just to get him off the table. And I have a sneaky suspicion that we burnt a lot of that intel in that act. But also, I think it's hilarious.
Even just military intelligence in terms of like radio communications and whatnot, like that would have been an obvious first. Disrupt the guards' communication systems, and then if we do that, then we lose that ability to get those. So if they have an internal system, which I know the U.S. we have, think of it like we have the internet, but then was it the intranet? So if you're like playing LAN gaming, we'll use gaming, right? So you're just plugging one computer into another, one console into another, in your own internal network. Like it seems plausible that Iran has that system in place, or they have runners. Who knows? We do a very similar thing here, but who's to say that hasn't been tapped as well? I know there's a famous incident in the U.S., to your point about burning assets, where I forget, it was a Georgia senator or congressman went and toured an intelligence facility, and then they was just like, hey, he was just bragging about it like politicians do. We're getting really good intelligence on the Taliban. We're listening to their cell phone calls, and then guess what happened like the next day? The Taliban stopped using their cell phones. It was so fun.
And maybe don't tip your hand to the enemy. That's
it. Loose lips sink ships. Is the
I am so glad to know that the tactic of taking basically a straw man, putting them inside a uniform, sticking them in a window, and then putting a broomstick in their hand so that it looks like there's a guy in the window with a rifle still works. Like,
yeah,
that's beautiful.
Tried and true. For thousands of years, they're like, that's a bad thing. Let's get it. Man. Just literally $1 million shadow, just bombing a shadow.
Bombing a shadow.
Oh man.
Yeah, but it's a necessary tactic in warfare.
Yeah. So any other reasons why you think for ground invasion?
So I mean, Israel's goal, I think, is pretty clear, which is to destroy Iran. And by destroy, I mean they want to break it up into a series of states, like independent Kurdistan, independent Azerbaijan, or have Azerbaijan break away and then have Iranian Azerbaijan join the independent Azerbaijan. And then an independent Baluchistan. If they can get that to happen, I think they think it'll be a major victory, because it seems to me that their objective in the Middle East right now is to destroy everybody. They want to bring down the GCC. They want to bring down Iran. We already destroyed Iraq. One of the great ironies in this current situation is that Iraq was Iran's fierce enemy. We destroyed Iraq, and now Iraqis are going into Iran right now as we speak to volunteer to fight for Iran. And they've gotten the green light from the Iraqi government to do this. So it's, so, like we didn't replace the Iraqi state with a puppet state. We replaced it with an Iranian ally. And so if there was an Iraq today that was still a fierce enemy of Iran, then, from like a geopolitical standpoint, you would have this sort of, you could put together an alliance, a regional alliance. As it is, there is an attempt to do that. The leaders of Egypt, Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia met in Pakistan, in Islamabad, to hold talks on, get it so that they had a consistent message that they were going to provide the world. And in a way, this war may have just created a new alliance bloc. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. So one of the weird things, though, is Pakistan is right now blowing up Afghanistan. They've been bombing Kabul. And Pakistan is an ally of Iran. Pakistan also has a great relationship with Saudi Arabia. So it may be that Pakistan has been put into a position where it's going to have to pick from its friends. The irony of hating the Taliban and bombing them is, first of all, a few years ago, I want to say, I'm guessing off the top of my head, 16, 17 years ago, I had an opportunity to talk to a Pakistani intelligence officer. And the kind of a funny conversation ensued where I was like, you're having so much trouble with the Taliban in the Swat Valley. What's your relationship with the Taliban in Afghanistan? And he said, the Taliban in Afghanistan are good and we really like them, but the Taliban in Pakistan are evil and we hate them. And I'm like, aren't they the same guys? Like, isn't it just that the Taliban in Pakistan are Taliban from Afghanistan who have gone into, like, I'm pretty sure. And so, to have Pakistan finally go, that's it, we're going after the Afghanistan Taliban after years of being their ally and funding them and helping them. And then, of course, that just made Pakistan closer to Iran because Iran also hates the Taliban. And then the irony, of course, is Modi from India is trying to make friendly gestures towards the Taliban in Afghanistan. And he's making a play for Afghanistan. And so now Pakistan is in this weird position of, wait, let's see. Who's allied to whom and whom should I get mad at next? I don't know. Like, I don't even know how you'd sort that out if you were Pakistan right now. They also are trying to, in addition to this, they're also trying to create peace talks. And, Trump keeps saying that the Iranians are begging him. The Iranians keep saying they're not, that they're open in negotiations, but they're definitely not begging.
Also, the big present. We still don't know what the big present was.
Oh, it was. We know.
Do we? I missed it. What was it?
It was Iran allowed 8 oil supertankers to go through the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, that was the big present?
Right. So we triggered Iran to close the Strait of Hormuz, and their present to us was to let 8 tankers through.
So that was the thing that was worth a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah. And somehow, this is a good thing. And it's like, you realize before we attacked, those 8 oil tankers would have gotten through anyway. Like, I don't understand. How is this a gift?
So going back to what we were first talking about, the conditions of winning this war are the things that were already present before we started the war.
Yeah.
Aye.
It's insane. Like, wait, so winning is going back to where you were? God, why did you do the war?
How amazing would that be? If that was the standard for everything that we did in our lives, like showed up to work and you just like spent half the day, wrecking the place, and then the second half of the day putting it back together, and your boss was like, really good work today, Jeremy.
Or you're in a race, they fire the gun and you just stand there. And you go, and when they approach you, you go, why did you stand there? And you say, well, I won the race because all I needed to do was end up right back here. So what's the point in running?
That feels like some pretty good logic, though.
Yeah. There's no point in running.
My son, he's 4. He walked out of the bathroom with like 3 rolls of toilet paper, and I said, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing? Let's put that back. That stays in the bathroom where we go. We use it to go potty." And he said, "No, we use toilet paper for everything." So, that's a fair point, right? So that's it feels like there's some logic in these things. So.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking. Oh yeah. Oh, it's so much better.
Nice. See, my son was right. He also came up with a new term the other day. He said, "I like salting." I said, "What is salting?" He said, "Salting means when you get Cheetos in a milkshake and you drink a milkshake and you watch TV." I was like, "Okay." He said, "That is what salting means." I'm like, "Okay."
Wow. I love it.
Okay.
Except for the Cheetos.
We don't have Cheetos ever. I don't know where
That's amazing.
But he's like, it's when you eat Cheetos and you drink a milkshake and you watch TV.
Wow.
That's what salting means. So
that's impressive.
So I have 3 questions from some of our members, from our participant and student members. I'd like just put this out yesterday, so sorry if y'all missed this poll for questions. I'll do this again for future episodes. So if you ever want to just throw some questions, I'll try and bring them up. It's something new I think we should do so we can continue to get your voice in here. So are you ready for some member questions, Roy?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Okay, they're all related to Iran. Okay, in your opinion, what does the U.S. define a successful end to the conflict with Iran, and what is the plan if Iran refuses to negotiate? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the question that I'm asking. I mean, I don't know. Here's what I imagine happening. Trump is already saying he's won, so he's ready to walk away, and then he walks away, and then what? So does Iran keep firing missiles at Israel and the GCC? By the way, Turkey and Azerbaijan and Iraq, like they just keep sending missiles? Do they keep the Strait of Hormuz closed? Like, Iran has a lot of questions it needs to ask itself, because it would be holding the cards in that moment. And then to what extent can it then leverage the Arab states and say, hey, we just won this war and we expect you to toe the line. We need you to kick U.S. bases out, for example. And then if you don't, we're just going to keep hammering you with missiles and drones. I mean, I think that if you're an Arab leader, whether you're President Sisi in Egypt or MBS in Saudi Arabia, you've got to be peeing yourself right now, because we don't know what Trump is going to do, and we don't know how he's going to react. And right now, Iran is winning the war. It's winning the war economically. It's winning the war politically. And so unless somehow the Trump administration can turn this around and make it so that Iran is no longer holding all the cards, this just is a disastrous defeat. And I think it's one of the reasons why the Turks, the Pakistanis, the Egyptians, and the Saudis got together in Islamabad to try and talk this through, because they're beginning to realize, oh my God, the United States, our ally that we relied on for so long to be this stable, Carney said it best, the Prime Minister of Canada. He said, the United States did some ugly things. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. The United States did some ugly things, and we were willing to turn a blind eye because we felt like the benefits we got from the alliance outweighed the nasty things. And of course, by nasty things, he means the Vietnam War. He means the war in Iraq. And, all the times that we overthrew democracies, like when we murdered Salvador Allende on September 11, 1973. Those allies, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and Turkey, are sitting there going, wait a minute, we were willing to let the United States slaughter Iraqis for no reason. The first war, okay, you're liberating Kuwait, Makes sense. Iraq violated international law. I got permission from the United States to do it, and then the United States turned on it like a rabid dog. But, it still, Iraq was in the wrong. I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to go, Iraq had a claim to Kuwait. You know what? I have a claim to Germany. I think Germany should be given to me tomorrow. So all of it.
What are you going to do with it, Roy?
I'm going to, I don't know. I haven't figured that. I haven't worked this out yet. It just seems like such a great country to own.
I haven't worked this out yet. I think that is our
FAFO.
That is our MO right now.
Yeah.
What are we doing? I haven't worked that part out yet.
FAFO.
FAFO?
Well, it's supposed to not be fool. It's a different F word, but I'll do it this way. Fool around and find out.
Oh.
But when I say Germany, I want the pre-World War I borders and Austria.
Wow.
Yeah. Just to be clear. Here's the thing. Here's a cool exercise. I'm totally derailing the question now. If I created an organization, I called my new ideology that I'm making Prussianism. And the goal is to take back the half of Pommern that Poland took, plus the half of Prussia that Poland took, and then Poland took Silesian from Germany. And take that out of Poland. We'll do military force to do it, so that we can create a Prussian state in Poland. And of course, we'll need to ethnically cleanse it and drive those Poles out, and then bring in German speakers. And then, we can bring in people of ethnic German origin who don't speak German, and then just teach them German once they get to Prussia. So, like we can go to Argentina and the United States and just bring all those ethnic Germans back and repopulate Prussia. Would I be okay doing that? I feel like that's the world we live in now, that it's okay to do this, like to Palestine, for example.
The analogy was very clear.
My goal is to LARP some fantasy I have about what it is to be Prussian and how cool it would be if I could do that all over again. And in the case of Trump, right, like this is the kind of language he uses when he talks about what he's going to do with the resources of that country. If Ukraine doesn't give us the rare earth metals, we're going to stop sending them missiles to fight the Russians. And, just this weird, bizarre, we're going to take Iran's oil. We're going to take Venezuela's oil. We're going to take Greenland from Denmark. We're going to take Cuba. We're going to take Iceland, because that's what he said at Davos. He kept saying Iceland. I don't know if he meant Greenland and he forgot that they were two separate places, or he's really going to go for Iceland. So I don't know. I think that the only way the United States wins at this point is one of two things. It's not a win, but a break even. We get Iran to stop somehow. Because think about it. If you're Iran has already issued us its surrender terms for the United States. Because the United States, at one point, Trump said unconditional surrender. And Iran said, well, we have conditions for your surrender. No U.S. military bases anywhere in the Middle East. The Straits of Hormuz belong to us, and we're going to charge a $2 million per tanker fee every time a ship goes in and out, regardless of who that ship, like it's a Saudi ship, too bad. The Strait of Hormuz belongs to Iran now. And then they had a few other conditions. But, the big ones was basically the United States out of the Middle East. So if at the end of the day, if Iran just keeps hammering U.S. bases and pulverizing them, at some point, the Arab states with U.S. bases are going to have to start asking questions like, do we really want a crosshairs on our country where we're just getting this constant barrage of missiles? The U.S. bases aren't usable because they're just constantly being pounded, and American military service personnel have to hide in hotels to get out of harm's way. And if Trump walks away from this, he tacos, and he doesn't finish the job, it's a catastrophe for the Middle East and it's a catastrophe for the United States. Because then what? What happens next? Do you bring in the Australians and the Germans, to do those bases, to operate those bases? Because a lot of the GCC states can't defend themselves against Iran. Imagine if Iran decided they want to take Bahrain or Qatar. Like how do either of those states say no? They don't have the military capacity. They don't have an army large enough to do anything about it. So the only way that they can guarantee security is they have to have some kind of foreign military presence. But I think what's happened is Trump has just taught the world that having a U.S. military presence is a liability, not an asset. And I don't know how you fix this. I don't know how the United States comes out on the other side of this looking okay without toppling the Islamic Republic, without replacing it with a monarchy, a secular monarchy, or a republic or something.
Yeah. I feel like if, we're going to spend a day at the beach, and so we know we're going to be exposed to sun, and instead of, not going to the beach or putting sunblock on, we're just like, hey, here's a bucket of fire ants. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. Now you get sunburned and you've got ant bites. I don't know. That's the weirdest analogy my brain just came up with. Sorry.
I loved it though.
But it's just kind of like, what? Yeah. Go ahead.
For those of you who don't know what fire ants are, they are actually from Brazil originally. They were brought to Texas by cattle that was purchased from Brazil. And I guess it just took one queen and they have taken over the United States South. And it feels like fire when you get bit by them.
Oh, and they love to do this thing where they'll crawl up on you and you'll have a bunch on you, and then they will bite you.
Then they start biting.
So once you get that bite, you've got them all over you. So speaking, and go ahead.
Oh yeah, here's the best part. In the 70s, we decided to eradicate them. They came in the 50s, and we decided to eradicate them. So we started hitting them with DDT, and what happened was they mutated. The fire ants, this is so weird how this happens in nature. Things evolve. They respond to the pressures of their environment and they adapt. So instead of having one queen in a nest, they would create multiple queens. That way, if one of the queens got poisoned, the nest could continue. And then the original fire ants had acid that they would inject in you as they bit you. But now the new fire ants, with the multi-queen ones, also have bacteria so that you get these little white nodule infections where they bit you. So now the United States government is actually trying to work with the original fire ants that haven't mutated to get them to defeat and replace the new mutated. It'll never happen. But, it's just hilarious how we have a problem and our solution to it is to make it worse.
So
it's so consistent.
This seems somewhat random, but it's all coming back to me now. I was in this wilderness first responder training class, and the guy sitting next to me was an entomologist who was a studying researcher at the University of Texas in Austin, and his specific project that he'd been working on for years was specifically fire ants and reintroducing their native predator to the area very carefully. So I was like, my first response was, please don't do that. That seems like a really bad idea. But he was talking about this. It's this tiny, tiny wasp that it doesn't kill them outright. It kills them indirectly, but very small numbers, but it will lay its larva inside of the fire ants. And I apologize to anyone who's like getting the icks right now, but just the presence of this wasp triggers the ants to behave like they do in Brazil. Because in Brazil, you only have one queen, one mound per like square mile.
Oh, wow. Because in Texas, it's completely overrun.
No, so you can
like
have...
Every 3 meters, there's a stupid fire nest.
So they're underground. They're in the dirt. But when we get rain here, which we have stormy seasons, they all will build their mounds will pop up out of the ground. So whenever it rains here, you'll see just these dirt mounds everywhere.
And then all of a sudden you'll see poison sprinkled all over them. I'm like,
Little
why?
white
Why are
powder.
you wasting your time? Yeah, like, or those little stupid yellow granules. You're like,
Oh yeah.
why?
There's like not
You're
you'll
not winning this war.
yeah, it's because there's no natural predator. There's an abundance of resources, so they're not competing against each other. So they're just everywhere.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to the questions. I'm going to put these last two questions together because I think they're related. One is specific to Brazil.
Awesome.
So the question about Brazil is, how will Brazil be affected? So it's just a simple question, I think, as it relates to the war in Iran. But the more broader question, the other question is, do you see this war as a global trigger for countries to start changing alliances away from the U.S., which is kind of what you're just talking about? And if so, would that weaken the American empire, and would that help global South countries?
Yeah. Okay. Both good questions. So let's start with Brazil. And I'll try and work it into the other question as well. Brazil is a latent superpower, right? I mean, it's got a population of over 200 million people, resources out the wazoo, and it has a massive chunk of land. Brazil's, I think, the fifth largest state on earth in terms of square miles. So there's no reason for Brazil to be in the position that it's in right now, which is sort of this sort of passive secondary role. And I think the Brazilian people have sort of figured that out recently. And some of that evidence is the fact that BRICS, the B in BRICS, is Brazil. Brazil makes its own tank. It's definitely, a major energy producer. To make things even weirder, a lot of beef that's being eaten in the United States is now being bought from Brazil. Brazil is exporting beef all around the world. But ironically, the United States used to be, the beef king of the world. The United States is cutting production and is relying more heavily on Brazilian beef. And I don't even think people realize that when they're in the grocery store, that they're actually buying Brazilian beef. Because Brazil has so much oil and so much energy potential, it's not going to be hit as hard as other states are. It can avoid a lot of the damage that's being done by having the strait closed. What I think I would like to see Brazil do is start to take a more active role on the global scene as a global power. I want Indonesia to do that as well. I think, both Brazil and Indonesia have shown themselves to have these really stable, moderate governments that, with exceptions like Bolsonaro, but that generally do more good for the world than harm. Every state on earth has its flaws. Nobody's perfect. Brazil had the Bolsonaro hiccup, but at the end of the day, I think states like Indonesia and Brazil would provide kind of like a balance for the world. I feel like we've gotten into this hyper transactional situation, and everybody's sort of in this competition mode. And I really want to see countries kind of step back just a little bit and ease away from that. But BRICS is interesting because what BRICS potentially could do, it's not meant to be a military alliance. And I think a lot of people are confused about that. They're thinking it's like NATO. It's meant to be an economic cooperative system. So the goal of BRICS is to bring together Russia is the R, India is the I, and the C in BRICS is China, and then the S is South Africa. Since then, Egypt, Iran, and United Arab Emirates have joined. I know Algeria was on the table to join, but I think something happened and they're not going to join. I know Saudi Arabia was at least considering it. I don't know what the status of them is at this point. But in a way, they're creating a new economic bloc that kind of counterweights the United States and counterweights the European Union. What I think the world needs to wake up to is that the United States has become this reckless, incoherent state that, not just because of Trump. It's been in the making for years. Certainly Nixon is, I think, a good starting point for when this became a real problem. Henry Kissinger's plan for the world when he was Secretary of State was to sow chaos everywhere. And if you look at the 8 years that Henry Kissinger was Secretary of State, 6 years under Nixon and 2 years under Gerald Ford, he succeeded in creating a lot of chaos. And some of that chaos came at a really heavy price. I mean, when you look at what the United States did to Cambodia and Laos, when you look at what the United States did to Chile during that time period, the United States wreaked havoc everywhere. During this 1973 Arab-Israeli war, Kissinger pitted Syria and Egypt off against each other in the peace negotiations just to split them apart, and created this bitter relationship, this angry, furious, hate-filled relationship with Syria as a result, because Syria realized what was going on and felt betrayed by Nixon because he promised them cooperative work, and he went the other direction. And then you look at what Reagan did, and you look at what Bill Clinton did. One of Bill Clinton's great contributions to humanity is he took funding that was supposed to go to the State Department and redirected it to the Department of Defense. And his thinking was, we're the hegemonic superpower, the Soviet Union's gone, why am I wasting time negotiating? I'm just going to use force to get my way. Like, we don't even need to talk to other countries as much as we used to. And that was one of the dumbest things ever. Like, in that moment, in the 1990s, the United States should have used its position as the sole hegemonic superpower to create a world that was a little bit less dangerous. And the way they could have done it was through soft power, sharing wealth, in building the economies of third world countries. When you think about it, okay, so I met a guy who's a business person here in UAE. I don't want to go into details, but I'll just give you a little bit of what he did. So he was shipping tea from India to Nigeria. But in India, it was boxed and the tea was put into the tea bags in India. And then they would unload it in Lagos, Nigeria, and distribute the tea to markets. He went, why are we doing this? What we can do is we can just get the tea raw from India, like not packaged, bring it to Lagos, set up a factory in Lagos, and then we can hire Nigerians to put the tea in the tea bags and then put it in a box, and then it can be packaged in Nigeria. It'll increase Nigeria's economic footprint. It'll save us on shipping costs because now you're not shipping all that paper and packaging, and it'll lower the fuel costs. It'll make it so that the tea is being sold to the Nigerians for cheaper. And then he said, but we're not going to take the profits. We're going to leave them because it'll develop Nigeria's economy. And as Nigeria's economy grows, then that money will be there for them to buy other products from us. In other words, he realized the simple truth, which is, if I can grow your economy, then you have more money to spend, and that'll grow my economy. And that's not the attitude that so many states around the world have. They have the opposite, which is plunder, pillage, and rape. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to steal your resources if I can, and if I can't, I'm going to give you horrible business deals and try and walk away with something. And somehow Americans who are at the heart of this think they're so clever. And they're like the hunter that kills too many deer this year. Next year, there are going to be fewer deer. Why are you need to kill the right amount of deer? Like, economic transactions need to be balanced. And I think most of the world has a relationship attitude. So when they make an economic transaction, they see it as building a relationship. They see it as they're going to have a transaction next year. Like in the case of this businessman with the tea in Nigeria, he's thinking long term. He's thinking, how do I expand Nigeria's marketplace, instead of how can I plunder, loot, and pillage Nigeria. So one of the things that I think would be effective for the world is to see a little bit more of that relationship building and a lot less of the transactional. The other thing I think we need to realize is the United States is done. right? It's run its course. This is probably its Waterloo. It may not be its Waterloo. It might be its Borodino, or maybe this is just Moscow burning. I'm not sure where we are in the Napoleon story, but it's the clock is ticking on this, and since 1969, the disastrous decisions that have been made. I didn't even do George Bush Jr. Have led us to this moment. It's not just Trump. And I think the world is finally waking up to this is a train wreck nightmare. How do we replace the United States? And that's where I have hope, because I don't want it to be one superpower, hegemonic superpower. It needs to be a cooperative endeavor. The states of the world need to get together. I'm going to say something crazy that probably wouldn't work. Like, imagine if there was a place they met. It could be anywhere, San Francisco, New York City, and then it could Geneva, Switzerland, and they could work out their differences. Babylon 5, like a space station, and you just bring all the different alien cultures to that space station, just work out their differences, and then actually start to think about how to make the world a little bit less dangerous, so that you don't have rogue states like Russia invading Ukraine and the United States and randomly attacking countries. Because that old world, that belongs in the 19th century. That we don't need to be doing that in the 21st century. It's too dangerous. There are nukes. There are biological weapons. There's fragile economies. Here's the big scare, I think, for most people. The GCC and Iran are vulnerable because of the desalination plants. So much of the fresh water comes from that. But forget that for a second. Every country on earth is vulnerable. The poorer that country is, the less vulnerable. The richer the country is, the more vulnerable. Because how many states today are self-sufficient in food production? Maybe the Netherlands and Brazil are self-sufficient in food production. There's a few places for sure that have really high food yields. Canada, probably. Mexico, I doubt it. Actually, no, I've said it. But most countries are stuck in this trade relationship where they're making some food products and then buying other food products. Like, just think of how much disruption when Russia attacked Ukraine, how much disruption happened for the whole world when it came to food, because so much of it was produced in Ukraine. So if you disrupt the economy, what does a city have? 2 weeks worth of food? Like, if you really mangle the economy in a bad way, at some point, our fragility starts to become really clear. We've made this really complicated economic system, and it wouldn't take much to unravel it. And we might be seeing the beginning of the unraveling of it. And, at some point, we're going to have to start to make decisions as a species about what kind of society we want to have. Do we want to handle global warming? Do we want to manage microplastics? Do we want to worry about the fact that, there's too much salt, sugar, and fat in people's diets, and we have, runaway diabetes? The drug industry is designed to keep you on the drugs, not to cure you from your diseases, because it's all about capitalism and generating money. When the United States was firmly in charge of the world, it was clear the answer was rabid capitalism. But it doesn't have to be going forward. So there's an opportunity here. Now, my suspicion is, based on history, we'll squander that opportunity, and we'll be worse off than we were, and AI will take over running governments, and eventually Skynet will take hold, and we're screwed as a species. But we don't have to end up like that. We could end up in a better position. And I do think that the global South could benefit from this if cooperation is the goal, right? Like, so many small states do all this backbiting competition with each other, and they trash each other on the internet. Like, I think right now Malta and Bulgaria have gone into this trashing each other thing. I'm hoping it's a joke. I really don't know. It'll be surprising if we see the Bulgarian Navy heading towards Malta to solve the problem once and for all. But the kind of backbiting that we see, where any given two states are like, it's not a friendly competition anymore. It's, I really hate your guts. As long as we have that attitude, there's no way that we can have cooperation. And as long as we don't have cooperation, all of us are screwed. And that's also a lesson I think the world has taught us. Like, I'm going to do it my way. I don't care about what you want. I'm in charge. That kind of a world has led us to this moment.
Yeah. Well, thank you for answering those questions. It's really interesting to get like kind of a more of a global perspective on how or what might happen if the probability of the U.S. losing its place as the kind of hegemonic superpower that we think that we are, that we're quickly not becoming that, or we're losing that status, I guess. That said, we do have one thing coming up, which will probably be shortly after this episode goes up. Maybe we're going back to the moon. So
yeah,
I think if there's any, I think we haven't seen this for 50 years. Manned space flight to the moon. We're not landing on the moon, but it will be the first time in 50 years that we will have photos and imagery of the Earth from another celestial body that's not a satellite. I don't know if that has any impact on people anymore. It certainly has an impact on me, where you can look back and see the Earth suspended in space. Anyway, I'm excited about a probable launch tomorrow on April 1st. Hopefully I don't think NASA's into April Fool's jokes. So, what do you think? What are your thoughts on, I know this is a massive change in the subject now, we're talking about space, but it's something we both like, and we haven't seen a NASA launch in a while. What are your thoughts on the NASA mission that's coming, that we're going back to the moon?
So I love NASA. I've actually been in mission control, the old one, and behind the glass, not where the tourists are. Like, I've actually been in the actual mission control. And on my wall over there is like the badges for all the shuttle missions up to, like, I want to say like the year 1999 or something like that. Maybe year 2000. So, like, I even have a NASA t-shirt. I'm totally into it. Having said that, I don't like where we are. I'm excited about the launch that could happen tomorrow. I think it's great that we're doing this. I'm just trying to figure out why it took us 54 years.
Yeah.
I feel like at some level we're celebrating reinventing the wheel. Like, dude, we already did this. Apollo 10 went around the moon. Like, you know what I mean? Like, Apollo 11 landed on the moon. It just feels really strange that the highlight of our tech, the highlight of this moment is celebrating 1968. And I don't know, I feel cheated at some level. Also, when they decided to do the Apollo missions, which should have been named Artemis, but we're sexist, right? Because Apollo is the sun god, Artemis is the moon goddess. But of course you're going to name it Apollo.
We fixed it this time.
We did. It's Artemis now. But still, like, what the heck? When we first decided to do this, we needed to build the Saturn V rocket engine. The Saturn V rocket engine was never intended to take us to the moon. It was intended to take us to Mars. And the Saturn V is such an amazing engine that even this new engine that they've installed, at some level, it's bigger and more powerful, but only barely. Like, at the end of the day, the Saturn V, they could have done another Saturn V rocket engine. The problem is NASA lost the blueprints for the Saturn V rocket engine, because that was actually the plan during the Bush Jr. administration, was just to reuse the Saturn V rocket engine. Then NASA lost the blueprints, and they were panicking, trying to figure out what to do. And then they realized Apollo 18 is laying on its side at the Johnson Space Center. They can't stand it upright because if a hurricane hits, you're going to have a rocket flying around. So they laid it on its side and they tied it down to the ground with these, on top of these concrete pylons. And they were going to actually pull the engine out and reverse engineer it. Obama got elected president and he put the kibosh on that and ordered them to design a new engine. From when they started building the Saturn V rockets to completion, they spent in today dollars something like $10 billion, and they made 15 rockets. It took them, I want to say it was 5 years from the start of design to the completion of the 15 rockets. For the 2 Artemis rockets, just 2, not 15, it was like 11 or 12 billion dollars, and it took them like 10 years to do it, not 5. And I think in a way that is another way to look at the United States. What we could do 60 years ago, because I think they started designing Saturn V rockets in 64 or 65. So it's just about 60 years ago. We could make 15 in half the time with less money than we can make 2. And it makes me wonder, how incompetent have we become? How corrupt have we become that's the case? And then, like the answer everybody has is, let's privatize it. Let's outsource it. Why? Why are we letting Elon Musk use US dollars, taxpayer dollars, to reinvent the wheel? We already did this. Like, I don't get it. It almost feels like it's just a concession. And you know what? There, at one point, wasn't there a Star Trek where the Vulcans? Yeah, it was Enterprise, the TV series that was a terrible TV series. Couldn't watch it. I tried. I really did. And it was Scott Bakula. I love that actor. But I couldn't. It was I don't know. The writing was terrible because Scott Bakula can literally play a girl chimpanzee and you'd believe it. Like he's that guy. Anyway, shout out to Scott Bakula. But so in Enterprise, what happened was the Vulcans had come to Earth and had intentionally stalled out Earth's space program so that it wouldn't go to space too soon. They wanted us to develop a little bit more socially before we started zipping around with warp drive. And I almost feel like that's what we did. Like, I think the Vulcans, maybe this was an attempt by somebody to tell us what really happened to the world, that we had the space program and aliens visited us and said, no, we need you to stop. And we were like, okay. I know that's not what happened. What happened was Nixon, but I don't understand. I guess here's a question. What's our mission as a species? What's the goal?
Like the biological goal, or?
Yeah, like what are we here for? Like what are we doing? Is it just to enjoy great tasting food and play video games? Is it circus and bread? Like that's the best we can do, is we can just be entertained and eat well? Or is there some better mission? Like for me, I think going into space would be really cool. I think another cool mission would be to fight global warming. Another cool mission would be to figure out how to solve the microplastics problem. Like, I think there are these really cool missions that we could be doing as a species that we cooperatively work together as a species to achieve. And instead, it's who's going to do the next war? Who's going to steal the more rare earth metals so that we can make cell phones? I kind of don't care. Screw cell phones. I'm totally addicted. I just, I'm not like, above cell phones. I just don't understand why this is our priority. And I think that's what bothers me about tomorrow's launch is we canceled Apollo 18 and we haven't done anything since. Now suddenly we're going to do something. Maybe it's because the Chinese are going to do it, and we just couldn't stand that they were going to do it, and it's just competition. But maybe that's what we need. I just don't know.
I toured the Houston NASA facility in 2008, and they had an exhibit about the Artemis missions, and that was almost 20 years ago. So it is frustrating. So I'm like the Apollo missions and the Mercury missions. This is the space race, right? We had a huge motivation. The entire public was like, let's do this. We were scared. We wanted to make sure that we had space superiority, because if you look at the tech, then I mean, if you toured in the facility, because they still have the original tech from those missions. Yeah. It's crazy.
It is so backwards.
You're like, oh my gosh, this is terrifying.
How did they pull this off?
It's amazing. People actually, thinking really hard about this. Lots and lots of people working really hard. That I can't believe that we were able to do it. I mean, even looking at the Apollo 13 mission, that should by all means been a complete failure. They should have died, but
they should have died. And the fact that they made it back was just awesome.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So this day and age, and I think what happened is after the space race, it became highly politicized. Every politician wanted a piece of the pie, and the greed stepped in. Manufacturers all wanted to have a part in this. This is why we had incidents with shuttles, because there wasn't enough communication between different manufacturers. And so, like O-rings and tile failures caused entire spacecraft failures. But then it slows everything down, right? Because then everything's being fought. Everything it's no longer cooperative effort. It's competitive collaboration, which what is that even? And so that's why go ahead.
I was going to say, also, we become risk averse. We don't want the Columbia and the Challenger and Apollo 1 to blow up anymore. And if you're going to do space, you have to accept that there's going to be some measure of risk. For the record, those astronauts want to go on those missions. They know full well what the risk is. So, I feel like the public feeling the risk is stupid, because the astronauts themselves are ready to go. And then on top of that, we make dumb decisions. Like, I still don't get the Columbia thing at all. Why didn't we send? We knew it was damaged. We knew it was the reentry tiles that were damaged. How many times did the news show the video of the tiles breaking off during launch? And, some tiles breaking off were normal, but we knew there was something unusual about that Columbia. Why didn't we send a rescue mission up? We had the Endeavour and the Atlantis. They could have gone up. And Discovery. We had 3 shuttles sitting on, and you're like, well, they would have been up there. They could have docked on the space station. The Russians could have just kept sending supplies up, so they would have been fine, right? The Soyuz craft was just great. And until we got one of the other shuttles ready to go up, and then gone up, and we could have just examined the stupid thing to see how damaged it was before we brought it back in. And they were like, it'll be okay. And, next thing you know, there's space shuttle wreckage falling on Palestine, Texas. And I felt like that was unnecessary. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there is risk involved for sure. And there's times to learn, but then they're unnecessary risk. But I think, the risk averse, because I feel like, I mean, this particular launch has been delayed 2 months. I can't remember all the reasons.
But why. I want them to get it right. Delay 2 months. Delay 6 months if you have to. Yeah. Get it right.
Yeah.
But then no, there's going to be a risk. There's a chance that this isn't going to work correctly.
But several.
That's why they set the first one up without anybody on board.
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely new system, but like billions of dollars worth of I don't even know what at this point, because I feel like to counter your earlier point with SpaceX, they they started after and have built rockets further and have done things that no one's even tried to attempt to do, like, catching rockets with a big robotic arm, which is
or landing
landing vertically. This is sci-fi stuff, right? This is stuff that we wouldn't have been able to see.
It's actually really cool stuff.
And like to SpaceX's credit and the privatization of this field, I wish you were right in that we wouldn't need to do this, right? Because we should have been able to do this with what we had with NASA before, but it was stalled out so much and it was costing so much that anyone who argued against it, like, why aren't we using this money for global warming, for poverty? And it's like, oh, yeah, those are really good.
They weren't. They were just cutting. They were just cutting the funding for no reason.
They're cutting NASA. They're cutting. It was just like, where was this money going, anyways? But so for privatized space flight, we've seen huge increases, which is both really cool to watch, but also a little problematic because it is privatized. So it's less accountability there. So I hope there are good actors here with good intentions in that field, because it is exciting to see the new technology come about. And this is the first time in a while we've seen human spaceflight go beyond the International Space Station in quite some time. So I hope it goes.
Literally 54 years.
Yeah, and I think of all the launches and all the missions, Apollo 8 is probably my favorite, because it's the first time we circumvented the moon. It's the first time we saw Earth from the moon. It was just a pretty amazing. I wasn't even alive, so for all of us who weren't here for the Apollo missions, this is a chance for us to kind of be reinvigorated by human space flight. So I'm hoping there's some big positives out of this that kind of reinvigorate a collective identity for humanity. Like, hey, we can do bigger things instead of just squabbling or making up reasons to go to war that we're still not sure of. So
I feel like that's a little bit of what Apollo 11 did. Like, so much of the world watched that launch live. But then people got bored, right? By the time we got to Apollo 17, they were bringing golf balls and golf clubs up just to do something. And it was like, really, that was the best thing you could come up with? You're going to go golf on the moon? And I think NASA kind of made a mistake in losing the American public's imagination, but also they ran headlong into Nixon, and Nixon's like, why are we spending money on space? It's stupid. We could be spending money murdering Vietnamese. Let's cut NASA's budget and let's spend that money slaughtering the Vietnamese. And then Reagan came along and said, why are we spending money on space when we could be cutting tax for the rich? Because imagine if you're worth $1 billion, the quality of your life will change so much if you're worth $10 billion. And that was sarcasm for people who didn't detect that.
What surprises it surprises me that there isn't more interest from the super wealthy in space, because there's a tremendous amount of, I mean, we don't know how to get to it yet necessarily and mine it, but the amount of resources in space. I forget the name of the asteroid. But we're sending a probe there right now, and it should be there in a couple years. But it's presumed that it has more gold and other rare metals on it, that if we were to bring that material just a little bit back to Earth, it would obliterate the rare earth metal market, because there's so much of it, which is not great for like the economic status of those things. But that material is a huge industrial material. So if we were to go out and, build some amazing new technologies, we're not limited by the cost of those materials. But anyway, there's a lot of untapped potential. I think there's even some, I remember looking at this in 2013, like rudimentary law on ownership of asteroids and mining rights in space. So it's something that's already been discussed for over a decade now in that field. So it's interesting to see. I'm just surprised that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe there are a lot of people who are trying to get there. Maybe that's Elon Musk is like, we're going to Mars, but on the way, we're going to stop by these places and get these resources. So I just hope no one's dumb enough to try and push one back to Earth without first making sure that it doesn't destroy the Earth.
Yeah. I think we should be colonizing Venus and Titan. Mars, I don't see it. It doesn't have enough energy. It's not protected from sun's radiation.
I think we have to have a base on Mars at least at this point, because it's been in the imagination
Let's
for
do
so
it.
long.
Yeah. And in my imagination as well, I just don't see colonizing it.
Right. I think as soon as we get people on Mars, people are gonna be like, golly, Earth is nice. Earth is real nice.
I'm sick of living in a lava tube. Venus at 50 miles up is 70 degrees Fahrenheit. The atmosphere isn't breathable, but there's plenty of energy because Venus is boiling hot below, and there's 120 mile an hour, 130 mile an hour winds. So, if you could create a floating structure, you have all the energy you want and all the sunlight you need. And then Titan's got methane seas and methane clouds and methane rain. So a little bit of oxygen and you've got all the energy you need. And the byproduct of burning methane is carbon dioxide and water, which if you're running a greenhouse, that's pretty perfect. So, and it's far enough from the sun that, its atmosphere is enough to protect it from sun's radiation. But at the end of the day, we really should probably do something also about the Earth, and I'm just confused why it's not a priority. I would think you would unify around global warming and microplastics, and instead we're just blowing each other up. We just don't get it.
Yeah, I think that's one of my biggest hopes of human space flight is just that looking back and realizing just how precious Earth is, and that we should be trying to increase our quality of life here rather than destroying it. Because let's be honest, no matter what damage we do, global warming, plastic, all these things, the Earth's gonna be fine. It's not. Yeah. It's not a matter of the damage to the Earth. It's
us.
It's us.
Yeah, I love it when people say we're killing the Earth. No, dummy, we're killing us. The Earth doesn't care about us. If we go extinct, the Earth will just adapt and move on, and it'll be fine. Anyway. Oh, by the way, I'm volunteering for Venus, not Titan. I need sunlight. Titan would be a really dark place.
Yeah, you get some good views, though. I mean, you can imagine.
Yeah, Saturn's rings.
I think it'd be really cool when you got there. I think after a few months, you would wish for some sunlight.
You wouldn't see anything. You'd have to get out of the atmosphere.
That's fair.
Cloud cover is insane. If you could get enough oxygen into the atmosphere and then detonate the atmosphere, you would terraform that place instantaneously because you just have a bunch of carbon dioxide and water. Then just put plants, and then the plants will start to generate some oxygen, and the carbon dioxide, of course, is going to create the greenhouse effect, which you want when you're that far away from the sun. But I don't see how you're going to get that much oxygen there quickly. Oh, I got it. We'll mine Saturn's ring for the water and then break the water down into hydrogen and oxygen, use the hydrogen for fuel. We still need to use the oxygen for the fuel. Darn it. Anyway,
we have all that methane. Unless we're igniting the entire moon.
Right. No, we need to just one big boom.
Just scorched. I guess not scorched Earth. Titan. It's scorched Titan.
Yeah. Scorched Titan. We just solved humanity's problems. Let's go blow up Titan.
There we go. Yeah, that's why.
And besides, methane just smells like farts. So we just be making this solar system less smelly.
Yes. On that note, thank you, Roy, for office hours hanging out, and thanks everyone for watching. And
thanks, Jeremy.
And hope you enjoy seeing a rocket launch. I think it's going to take a little bit before it gets to the moon, so we'll probably chat before that happens. So
that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks.
Take care.